Good morning. I'm Susie Snyder. I'm a curator here at the Holocaust Museum. Welcome to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Thank you for joining us for First Person. Our guest today is Fritz Gluckstein, who we shall meet shortly. This season of First Person is made possible through the generosity of the Louis Franklin Smith Foundation, to who we are grateful again for sponsoring First Person. It is a series of weekly conversations with survivors of the Holocaust who share with us their firsthand experiences associated with the Holocaust. Each guest serves as a volunteer here at the museum, and Fritz actually is my volunteer. He translates for me every week. He comes in and reminds me that I need to find another translator, even though Fritz will live to be 105. Fritz will share with us this week his first-person account of his experience during the Holocaust and as a survivor for about 45 minutes. We will follow that with an opportunity for you to ask some questions, and at the conclusion of the program, we ask that you just give us a moment because Fritz will have the last word. After that, he will actually sign a memoir that he wrote outside in the lobby, and you are welcome to visit him there as well, and all proceeds to the book go to the museum. The life stories of Holocaust survivors transcend the decades. What you are about to hear from Fritz is one individual's account of the Holocaust. All of these first persons that we do at the museum are online at ushmm.org, and you can go online and see all of them. We've prepared a brief slide to introduce you to Fritz. Fritz Gluckstein was born in Berlin, Germany on January 24th, 1927. These contemporary photographs show where Fritz lived, attended school, and played. He was the son of a Jewish judge and a Christian mother, Georg and Hedwig Gluckstein. As a child, Fritz enjoyed family activities, friends, and school gatherings. After the Nazis came to power, Fritz's father lost his job as a judge, and because of his father's and his mother's background, Fritz was considered a Geltungsjude, a counted Jew. The Nuremberg racial laws based Jewishness on genealogy and religious practices. This is the Star of David that Fritz was required to wear. Throughout these difficult times, Elfriede Dressler, Fritz's aunt, provided the Glucksteins with much-needed extra food and rations as their rations continued to decrease. In this photo, we see Fritz and his aunt Elfriede after the war. At the end of the war, Fritz's parents stayed in Germany, and Georg Gluckstein resumed his judicial career. Fritz decided to emigrate to the United States on his own and arrived in 1948, where he studied veterinary medicine and became a veterinarian. Please welcome Fritz. So thank you very much, Fritz, for being here. I wanted you to tell the audience a little bit about what your life was like before the war, when you first started school, what your parents were like.
Yes, well, life was pretty good. My father was a judge. He had served the First World War, got the Iron Cross, and always showed the flag on holidays. Even taught me how to salute the flag. But we had lived in Maine, and we went to the zoo, visited the Bobby, the great gorilla, and took trips. And
you lived a good lifestyle.
Yes, and of course, my mother wasn't Jewish, I was Jewish, but we still observed both holidays. I had the best of two worlds, Christmas and Hanukkah, Passover and Easter. It was really very fine.
Did you, you said your father was a First World War veteran, so he was very a patriotic German.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about your grandparents. What were your grandparents like on both sides of the family?
Actually, I never knew my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And
were they deceased?
Actually, yeah, they were deceased. Actually, if we go farther back, my one grandfather was a cantor, a teacher, and the other grandfather was a watchmaker.
So when did you first, you were born in 1927.
Correct.
Hitler comes to power in 1933. You're
Right.
old enough to really understand. When did you start to really understand things were different?
Well, my father lost his job.
In 1933.
1933, he lost his job immediately, and they told him, don't leave the building in front because there's a demonstration, the Nazi demonstration. Leave in the back. Said my father, I came in to the front and I leave the front. And of course, immediately we had to move to a small apartment. Money was very tight. And
What did your father do for money, for a living?
well, he actually, fortunately, his pension wasn't a little bit better because he served in the First World War. He gave advice at the Jewish Community Center.
So he counseled people.
Oh, yes, of course.
He lived off a pension.
Without money. Mm-hmm. Of course, I must say, my father's colleagues came, some brought roses. We are so sorry, but of course we can't have any contact with you anymore. But I might say right now, my aunt, you saw her, stood by us, really helped us. And my mother's relatives stood by us too.
So I just wanted to clarify that your aunt, Elfrieda, was not Jewish. She was your mother's sister.
This is correct.
So she took a risk by helping you.
Absolutely. I remember, actually, I remember one case we met quite at night. She wanted to give me some food. And lo and behold, who's coming? One of the Nazi neighbors. And, but he said, good evening, Mrs. So-and-so. He is helping me carry. Absolutely, she took a task. That is right.
So you're going to school. Are you going to public school still after 1933?
Yeah, no, 33, I had to go to the public school. Mm-hmm. I was very lucky. The school I went to was not very few Nazis. The principal kept it very civil. And I must say, was in some schools, the Jewish student had to recite patriotic poems, had to sing songs, and really were treated quite badly. I was fortunate.
So, and did you have other Jewish friends who were at that school?
Yes, actually, about 3 other Jewish friends at that school. That's correct. And I must say, our homeroom teacher, a party member, treated us absolutely as any other student.
So he was a member of the Nazi Party?
Yes. I might as well mention here the fact that somebody was a member of the Nazi Party does not mean he was actually a Nazi. Example, man works in a insurance company, 2 children, mother-in-law lives there. Well, they told him, better join or no promotion and you wind up in Podong Junction. The man was no hero. Or even the great conductor Karajan, he joined, but he was no Nazi, just wanted to become music director in Aachen.
They just wanted to make it through the war.
Yes, but
right.
Some of the worst people were not party members at all.
Right, but what about, while we're talking about that, non-Jewish children also were Hitler Youth and Hitler Maiden, right?
Yes.
That was something that they had to do?
Yes, they had to do. They had to join.
And so, did you have friends who also turned their backs on you?
Actually, fortunately, the friends I had stayed with me. Actually, and even as I was quite civil in school, a few people, yes, but the principal kept it down, and I could stay there till 4 years. Then came the time, influx of really rowdy students, and it was decided I leave the school and enter a Jewish school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did things become more difficult as time went on?
Well,
could you go to the movies? Could you go shopping?
It started out, first no special bank park benches for Jews, and then signs, Jews are not welcome here, or to take a town, Jews enter this town at their own risk. But what is important, at the time of the Olympic Games, all disappeared. You could go everywhere. All signs disappeared. The moment it was over, signs were there. And of course, once the war started, things are getting more difficult.
So once the war started in
the special ration cards,
1939.
Special ration cards and not special allotments, and only allowed to shop between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. My mother could shop. A decent shopkeeper said, if nobody is looking, show me your family's ration cards. And then, of course, air raids started. It was really, I remember sitting, there was a rule, if the alarm sounded after 1 o'clock, school started late and classes lasted 35 minutes. And I still see myself sitting there and hoping, well, I hope it will stop the bombing, but if it just lasts 5 minutes longer, school will be later.
Your mom, through all this, what was her life like? I mean, she obviously was supportive of you, your father, but when she went out in the street, when she went shopping, when she was able to do things, what was it like for her? Did her friends turn their back on her?
Very few friends. Yes, some neighbors you always have. All in all, we were fortunate. But of course, she helped friends. No, that the 40, I had to take all Jews, male Jews had to take the middle name Israel, and the name Fritz Israel, and the women Sarah. And got an identification card, a special one. And whenever we went to police or any government office, we had to raise it and say in a loud voice, I am a Jew. And every signature and registration number so-and-so.
So let me just clarify. In 1938, the Nazis passed a law stating that all Jews had to, as Fritz said, take the middle name Sarah or Israel. And this was for the purpose of the Nazis being able to better identify you as a Jew. And it was on every document you had. So 1940, though, you mentioned 1940. You did actually have a bar mitzvah, didn't you?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what it was like under the circumstances?
Well, at bar mitzvah, it was the big synagogue, of course. It it was cold and the large synagogue couldn't be heated. It wasn't a small chapel, but I had a bar mitzvah and friend in that time. It was 41. Actually, it's very decent. My father had a fellow, when he went to one of the bakers, was his, went to war together, and he was very nice. He gave us some cakes and so on. We're lucky.
How did you learn? Who taught you?
The school. We had a regular school, Jewish school, and actually it was in effect a German school, actually directed by the German government. And there we learned German history, the discipline, and no sneezing, that was not permitted, and not laughing. And you know, there is still one thing I can't do. I still can't do this. And why not? Whenever you did that, you were asked, going on a trip? Why? Well, you packed your hands already.
No hands in the pocket, right?
No, after, of course, the school then in 42 was closed because the final
Solution?
report I had read closed because of the dissolution of the Jewish school system. And then, of course, this came the Star, and then the deportation.
So let's back up and talk about the implementing of the wearing of the Star of David. How did you feel about having to mark yourself?
Well, actually, we have to do it, we do it, and we make the best of it. They said Jew, well, I was a Jew.
So you wore it proudly?
I would say I took it.
What would happen if you didn't wear the Star of David? And they knew if they found out you were a Jew?
Better not, you might be deported. In fact, at times, a nasty policeman occasionally came with a pencil, and if the star wasn't fixed tightly, oh my, if he got his pencil behind it, it was bad. But all in all, actually, people in Berlin, some difficulties, but quite decent. In fact, it happened a couple of times, some people just sat up to me and gave me some soup or actually some food. People, all in all, it is in Berlin. Not everybody was bad.
Right. Well, you did talk about this when you were mentioning the slave labor that you did. We can talk about that. We can jump ahead to that if you don't mind. Your father and you had to perform slave labor. Can you describe what you had to do?
Well, actually...
And I'm sorry, what year did you...
It's 43. Actually, it started out forced labor. The first forced labor was to work in a factory. Mm-hmm. And what did we do? Armaments for, I believe, I didn't know what I was doing, but I guess for the Air Force, I think so. And my father did some labor in a factory. And then later on, this was a business after the Rosenstrasse, we labor gangs to clean up after air raids, clean the streets, tear down the walls, and moved around in Berlin.
You say air raids, but really they were bombings.
What?
You say that after air raids, you were conscripted to clean the streets.
Yes.
But what you're talking about is after bombings.
Yes, after bombing.
So you're living in a city that's being bombed.
Yes.
The bombing would end.
Next morning, we went to the places that cleaned up, tore down the walls, whatever had to be done.
So you were moving building construction?
Yes, tear it down.
And I'm sorry, how old are you at this point?
16.
16. And how hard was the work?
Well, it wasn't easy, dangerous. One time, wall came down. I lost conscience. And there too, we had a medic fix me up first, then brought me to a hospital. It was a Catholic hospital. And they are not supposed to treat any Jew. But they treated me, sewed me up, gave me a tetanus shot. I still wonder what they put in the record, because he took a risk taking care of me.
That's right. So you mentioned that your father also did slave labor. He was in a factory.
Yes.
What kind of factory?
Osram, some, I don't know what, light armament. I really don't know what he did.
And at one point, he's actually arrested.
Let me tell you now, the deportation started. Or in fact, in school, suddenly the neighbor wasn't there. You hope while he is sick, but then you realize he was deported. And then my mother at one time accompanied friends to the collection point. Lo and behold, a Gestapo guy, what are you doing here with the Jews? I bet you have a Jewish family. Tomorrow, your husband and son are going to deport downtown to a collection point. Well,
They said this to your mother?
my okay, you have a Jewish family, your family is going to report tomorrow collection point. And so we did, was downtown. Father and I reported. It was formerly an old people's home, and it was under the command of an SS captain from Vienna, Brunner. There we were sitting in rooms, about usually 15 men together, other Jewish men with non-Jewish relatives. And there too, we were not permitted to lie down during the day.
You had to just sit there the whole time.
Strict order. But the regular policemen who guarded the building, they came around and said, get going, he's coming around for inspection. Remarkable. Had they been caught, the least what would happen, the Eastern Front. And there too.
He would have been sent to the Eastern Front.
Yeah.
So here
there are risks too.
He took a risk trying to help you.
That's right. But then after a week, I was told half an hour downstairs for interrogation. And I still go downstairs. Well, and my father, an old gentleman, understood, a distinguished journalist, prepared me. Don't be a hero. Don't show any contempt or hostility. Answer the question fully, but do not volunteer anything. And I get in there, and there the Captain Brunner was sitting and tried to catch me right away. Ha! Your mother is Jewish? No, I said, my mother is Aryan. And after that, he asked what you're doing. At that time, I worked at the Jewish community center. But okay, now we're going to give you a decent job. Tomorrow, you go to the labor exchange. They give you a decent job. And get out of here. So stepped out. That was my father. And we stepped out to the street, leave. And the date, it was January 24th, 1943, my 16th birthday.
So what was the backstory to that?
After that, I went to work in the factory. And then came actually something quite significant. Work in the factory, Saturday morning, door opens, SS officer. Everybody out and assembling outside. Then a truck came. We all downtown to a dance hall, empty old chairs and tables aside. There we sat. And after 12 hours or so, a good friend of mine, I was interviewed by plain policemen, quite decent, and they said, "Get out of here." They let us go, because we both had non-Jewish mothers. And we stepped out to the street. It was 8 o'clock at night, and thereby broke the law. There was a curfew. Nobody had to be out after 10 o'clock at night. It wasn't an official law, but if somebody wanted to go to the police, I have to visit my mother at the hospital. I need permission to go out. The police said, "Well, what do you don't know about it?" And then I went home, and my mother had visited an aunt in Silesia. And next morning, it was end of the month, somebody to pick up the ration cards. I went to the office, was arrested, and sent to another collection point, happened to be the synagogue where I had Mitzvah. And went there again to office of the Jewish community in the Rosenstrasse. And there we're sitting, again 12 men in the room, just enough to lie down. And they were sitting, speculating what would happen to us. And of course, stand in line for the facilities. Of course, the building didn't have enough facilities for an influx of many people. After a week, downstairs, released, found my father, and she both had to wait. Someone, secretary from the community, typed out a release slip, and they had to be signed by the sergeant in charge. And still my father comes, when he said to him, "You were the judge, that you certainly ruined the life of many people." Said my father, "I hope not." And we stepped out. But what we did not know, while we were inside, there was a demonstration of the non-Jewish women, and they asked for the release of the husbands and children. And they defied the Gestapo, the police, and SS. And according to the diary of Goebbels, the Minister of Volksenlightenment and Propaganda, he said, "Well, let's not have unrest right now. We can take care of the intermarriages after a while, particularly right after the Stalingrad debacle." And there they let us out. And after that, they sent us to the labor gang.
So you realized that your mother was one of these people that demonstrated?
Yes. Actually, she wasn't there because she came back. She visited my aunt in Silesia, and I sent a telegram it might be advisable to come. He was not among them, but many friends, the good women were out there.
And this was unusual. This was an unusual thing that the demonstration yielded.
The only demonstration, the only challenge of authority in the Third Reich. Mm-hmm. Only once.
Tell me about the labor gangs. What were they like?
Oh, quite. Though we had lawyers and engineers. And you remember my chemist, and he, of course, had to tell me about the language which was banded around. Don't forget, 16 years were quite protected. We didn't hear very much. And he told me some of those words. Lo and behold, I was working at a factory in St. Paul, and some nice guys tried to teach me certain words, hoping I would use them and embarrass myself. Didn't work. Those words are of Anglo-Saxon origin and quite similar in German.
What did you do on the labor gang? What was your job?
Stand on the wall with a pickaxe and get it down, and try to move, shore up the buildings.
But your father, was he with you at this point?
He came actually, he too, but at the beginning we were different. But one day a group came, my father came toward the end of the war, we worked together.
And how did you manage through the day? What got you through the day?
Well, as you know, we always had some good jokes. It helped. We taught a little joke, and some are quite nice. The Goebbels, the Minister of Folk Enlightenment and Propaganda, fell in the river Spree that runs through Berlin, and the young guy pulled him out. Well, my boy, what can I do for you? You saved my life. I want a state funeral. State funeral? Yes, my father finds out I pulled you out, he's going to kill me. Or, there is a SS-man, the Jew. You Jew, I'm going to shoot you. But if you can tell me which one of my eye is glass, I let you go. Oh, I thought you do. Very simple. It's your right one. How do you know? Well, it looks so human. And then, I guess, we had a little dog. Actually, Jews were not permitted to keep pets, but we kept a little dog. This dog had been trained. If you give him something in that for the Nazi, he didn't take it. But if you were the Jew, he took it. And there was one job when my father died. When will war be over? Well, when the British eat rats and the Germans eat rat substitute.
So around this time, though, you know, after 43, people start to disappear from, Jews start to disappear from Berlin, those that haven't fled. Yes. Where is it that people think they're going? What is the conversation or the rumors?
Well, we all look. We had our rucksacks and bags ready. We would be sent to the east, Poland, Latvia. And of course, once he invaded Russia and up to the Ukraine, well, we hoped for the best.
Did you know what the East meant?
We had a pretty good idea. At the beginning, you could send food. You get a postcard, 10 lines, and you sent some food. And usually get a thank you note. After a while, we didn't get that. We get a pretty good idea what happened. Yes, didn't know exactly, but we had a good idea.
And at one point, you meet Eichmann. You see Eichmann, Adolf Eichmann, who was a high-ranking Nazi official.
I worked at the labor gang. We were bombed out second time, lived at the hospital. Morning, I go out to work, hop, get in here in the truck. Okay. Actually, it was a moving van, and we're driven around, and the destination was Eichmann's headquarters downtown. There, out and put to work. I was lucky too. My immediate supervisor was a young lieutenant, polite, no remarks. Some of the officer was very nasty there. But one day we worked, and suddenly Eichmann is coming. Every Jew knew who Eichmann was, the driving force behind the deportation. And I just wondered, how would he look? Well, there he came. Ordinary. Nobody would have noticed in the crowd. Come, stand next to me, give some instructions. And disappeared. And the two were to work. Interesting, too. We worked outside building, filling up wheelbarrows, our hands, no shovels. There was a guard always going around. The guards changed every 2 hours. One guard always really behind us. We took a break. And the other guard, I still see him, little guy, red-faced, looked at us, never said anything. And whenever we took a break, he found something else to watch over there. He made a point of not harassing us.
So he sort of turned a blind eye to...
He did not belong there.
Yeah. So there were good...
I always find...
So in the winter of 44, 45, it's quite awful. The winter is awful, and it's cold and miserable, and you're still working outside?
Yes. Well, that was absolutely.
How did it affect your father?
But
How did your father do in that?
he did all right. Well, you hoped, looked forward. But of course, then came one day we were working out. We were working close to SS barracks. And what did we see? Quite a long line of trucks pushed by SS men. What a sight. Delightful. Schadenfreude, but delightful. Look, even the SS doesn't have any Vaseline. Then the Third Reich must come in soon. And
so this was really an indication to you that they were really losing steam and losing the war.
But we know, at that point, if they have to push the military trucks, now come now. But still, they haven't given up. We were taken from the Gräbergang to a place where we had a foundation for a new Berlin after the war. Imagine, that was in 44. But it was over only a short time. Then he sent us to the southern port to build anti-tank ditches. And what did we do? We dug ditches and put beams into the ground. And we did that for about 12 hours. And then we left. And then we looked and said, how long will it take the Russians to get through our work? Well, figured out it will take the Russians 31 minutes to get through. Why? The tanks will come to the impediments. The crews will laugh for 30 minutes. It will take them 1 minute to get through. Actually, that's what happened. Because the two armies approached Berlin from the east, from the south. The Ukrainian army under Konyev came in so fast, the western part of Berlin was less street fighting, they couldn't get to the Jews. We had a little bit part in liberation of Berlin. We didn't do a very good job, actually.
So what was it like when you were, describe liberation, what you felt like at liberation?
Well, I still remember liberation, how it came at the end. Of course, no more used ration cards. Went to a bakery, hoped you would get some bread. Well, I went away to get some bread, came back, and the Russians had arrived at the home. And of course, he didn't believe I wasn't an SS man out of uniform. Jews asked. Fortunately, I could have a star, and the neighbor could speak Russian. And
so you actually needed that star so the Russians knew you were.
They didn't believe me.
Right. It helped protect you so the Russians didn't think that you were Nazis.
Then of course.
How did they treat the civilians, the civilian Germans?
It's not too good, actually. It depended. It was pretty rough. Right.
How did you feel watching it, being conflicted? Because
look, after the war, we said, well, wait, once it's over, we're going to after so and so. Of course, we wouldn't lower ourselves. Of course. But after that, of course, Berlin was divided and between
after liberation.
Liberation.
Yeah.
And we always could tell food supply. 1 month was white bread. The Americans or the Western supplied the food. Next month was dark bread, the Russians. And I tell you, it's, of course, no heat. And it was a very tough winter.
Right, there's a war still going on.
But
There's a war still going on in other parts of Europe for the next couple of
yes,
months.
but you might have fought, but by that time it was almost over. And of course, but everything froze, was no water, and of course, so to the toilet facility froze, and people who had gardens could bury the waste, but you can imagine what happened in town. But you actually saw very often people with little packages depositing them in the front yards, in the parks. As long as it was cold, freezing fine. When it gets hot, you can imagine what happened.
Right.
Food was very tough. We moved to a place outside Berlin, and it was a house. In front we planted tomatoes, and in the back we planted potatoes. But then we lucky came the care package, and they had everything from toilet paper to cigarettes. And cigarettes, the new currency. If you had kerosene, you could buy anything. And there too, Lucky Camels, most valuable, Lucky Strike, and so on. And I remember when I was ready to enter the boat to come over here, we're told, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you step foot on the boat, remember a cigarette is just a cigarette. And something else of the message, the care packages. Instant coffee. We had never seen instant coffee. Usually a coffee ground was used 3 or 4 times. You pour, there was nothing left. Yes, but that we are, it was care packages really helped us.
So let me ask you a question about getting back on your feet, your family. Your father went back to work.
My father went back to work.
As a judge?
As a judge, of course.
And did you go to school?
And I went back to school. After going back to school after 3 years, you can imagine it was quite difficult. Again, school, homework and studying, and of course the school business. But, we managed. Difficult to get teachers who were not Nazis, but I went back to school.
And you and I have talked about you moving here. You came to the United States, but you did not come with your parents. You left them there.
That's right. Well, after a while, things are getting better. But I decided, no, thank you, I would like to stay here. It's not my duty to rebuild Germany. Well, said my father, if I were younger, we could both, your mother and I, would go with you. But at my age, what can I do? Over there, the law is different. It is based on old English law. Here in Germany, it's based on old Roman law. What could I do? Be a laborer? We stay here. But for you, the future is America.
So they didn't withhold you from going?
No, they didn't. They let me go. In fact, they encouraged. Yes, we'd rather have you here, but I think your future is there. But, said my father, I hope you will choose a profession that is not limited to one country, like law. Well, so I did.
Did you feel regret or a terrible conflict leaving your parents? I mean, you were an only child.
Yes, Well, I knew it would be difficult, but, we have to go ahead.
And they didn't hold you back?
But
And they didn't hold you back?
didn't hold me back, no.
When did they pass away?
We passed later, actually. My father was 70. After I actually had graduated, I would say this was in about 50s, late 50s or so. Yeah. They visited me actually here. I was stationed in the army here at Fort Detrick, and they came, visited me here.
And so you came here, you went into the military. Did anyone know your story? Did you talk about it?
At the beginning, nobody cared. Not at all. Absolutely not.
Nothing?
No.
Did they not care, or did you not talk
Actually,
about it?
occasionally, let's say what happened, they knew something. I remember there was a Purim, it's a Jewish holiday, and they had a party there, and there was a pie throwing contest. They threw pies in the face of someone, and I was very upset. How can you do this? Still pretty good. They can be used for food, and they couldn't figure out. But I got so upset. It was at the Jewish Hillel house, the Jewish student house, and the rabbi came and explained to them afterwards why I was so upset. At the time, food was very precious. That perhaps, but at the beginning, nobody cared.
Is there anything that you missed about Germany, other than your parents when you came here?
I miss about Germany. Look, no. I've been back to Berlin. My first wife, my second wife, and it's very nice. The beer is good, and opera, I'm an opera fan. It's very good. But after a week or 10 days, I come home again. Home is here.
Well, let's open it up and see if people have questions. So I'm going to ask you to ask. Oh, you have a mic. Okay, good. So please speak clearly into the mic so Fritz can hear you.
During the Nazi regime, did it ever occur to you to align yourself as a Christian on your mother's side, since you were 50% Christian, rather than with the Jews, and maybe would that have made a difference in your life, do you think?
No, for some reason. At that time, no.
It wouldn't have made a difference, no?
Maybe it could. Perhaps, yes, I guess, and sometimes, I believe it, people tried to bribe or so on, but no, that didn't occur to me.
And just to clarify, if you were, his parents having, his mother being non-Jewish, his father being Jewish, was already somewhat of was somewhat helpful, but it didn't make a difference.
In the Jewish culture, though, aren't you Jewish
So our visitor asked, in the Jewish culture, it's maternal. If your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. If your mother is not Jewish, you are not considered Jewish. The Nazis didn't look at it that way. They didn't they didn't follow the Jewish line where it's matrilineal. So.
I would like to ask a question about Rosenstrasse. I'm
Yes.
right down here. How long did the Aryan women demonstrate for your freedom? Was it hours or was it days?
They kept us there for a whole week.
Good.
Yeah, they came back, yes. Put him away, boop, they came back, yes.
Was there any recriminations to them for that effort later on?
No, I guess Goebbels didn't want any unrest. We deal with the intermarriages and afterwards, not now.
Right, it is somewhat
don't forget,
amazing to
right
see.
after the debacle of Stalingrad. Oh,
So this is really the only time a demonstration has ever helped victims, and there is a movie about it. What's the movie called?
Rosenstrasse.
Rosenstrasse. Okay, the movie's called Rosenstrasse, which was the name of the street.
And at the Rosenstrasse, well, it's the site of the Rosenstrasse,
Yeah.
there's now a monument, very nice. No, they go to women.
Yes.
Just to follow up, do you think those women saved your life?
Yes.
So you went to America in 1948, is that correct?
Yes.
You saw the discrimination against the Jews in Germany. How did you feel about the discrimination between whites and blacks in America when you first came there?
How did you feel when you came to the United States about the discrimination against the blacks?
Well, I said, yes, in some way, I know how you feel when you're discriminated. Absolutely. I still remember at the beginning, it became clear, actually, in Maryland at that time. Even here, when I came to Washington, at that time it was quite segregated. And in Frederick, where I was stationed, there was quite a bit of segregation. The movie, the African Americans upstairs and the whites downstairs. It was not it was a de facto segregation. Yes, I was, and I still didn't actually believe it. It was in Richmond. I saw restrooms for blacks, restrooms for white. I must say, it brought like memories.
Does anyone have any other questions? Yes.
Were any members of the Jewish side of his? Were any members of your father's family, the Jewish side of your family, interned in any of the camps?
Were any of your father's family persecuted and interned in camps?
No. My father's cousin went to Shanghai, and yes, there's some very distant, that is right, second cousin, yes. And actually several second cousins, yes, they died.
Mm-hmm. But it was common it was not common, but there are some there were thousands of Jews that fled to Shanghai, China from Germany and Austria. They were able to go.
Yeah.
So that was one of the options.
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes.
First, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to ask, how did your aunt fare through that time? Your aunt that had helped you, how did she fare through it or come through the war?
Well, actually, he stayed alive, and I believe he died in fact, my daughter, wife, visited her just before she died, and it was about 60s. Let me say a few final words.
Yes, absolutely. So Fritz has just a few final words. So go ahead.
It was my good fortune to have come to the United States, and I am forever grateful for the help I received and the opportunity given to me. I value my American citizenship most highly, and I'm often being asked what I have learned from my experiences. And my answer is always the same. Don't do to others what you don't want on yourself. And then do it now. Don't put it off. Don't wait for the opportunity. If you have a dream, go after it now. And then pay that visit, write that letter, make that call. And if you have 2 bottles of wine, drink the better one first.